Good morning and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. It is Thursday, November 3rd at 10 a.m. and we are here in docket number 2022-5-G for a hearing on the annual review of purchase gas adjustment and gas purchasing policies for Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. With us virtually, we have Commissioner Irvin. Present in the hearing room, we have Commissioner J. Williams, Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner C. Williams, Commissioner Caston, and Chair Belser. Recognize our staff counsel, Ms. Mosier, to read the docket, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, commissioners and parties. We are here today for the proceeding in docket number 2022-5-G regarding the annual review of purchase gas adjustment and gas purchasing policies of Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated. The proceeding has been scheduled for today, November 3rd at 10 a.m. All parties participating in this matter are available, and the docket is in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mosier. Let's take appearances from the parties.
Good morning, Chair Belser, Vice Chair Powers, and members of the Commission. My name is Matt Gissendanner. I'm Corporate Counsel for Dominion Energy South Carolina. With me today is Mr. Chad Burgess, who is also Corporate Counsel for Dominion Energy South Carolina. It's our pleasure to appear before you today, and we appreciate the opportunity to present this case.
Thank you, Mr. Gissendanner. Welcome to you and Mr. Burgess. Office of Regulatory Staff.
Good morning, Madam Chair Belser, Vice Chair Powers, and members of the Commission. I'm Donna Rainey, Counsel for ORS, and here with me today is Chris Huber, and we're appearing for ORS. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey, and welcome to you and Mr. Huber also. Counsel, are there any preliminary matters that we need to take up before we begin? I believe that both parties are presenting their witnesses as panels today. Is that correct? Everybody's nodding affirmatively. Mr. Gissendanner, please proceed with your case.
Thank you, Chair Belser. Dominion Energy calls Greg McGlohorn, Rose Jackson, and Jatan Smith.
Before y'all are seated, I'm going to ask that the court reporter swear you in, if you would.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Mr. Gissendanner, you may proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Mr. McGlohorn, would you please state your name for the record?
Greg McGlohorn.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy South Carolina, and my role is General Manager, Gas Operations.
And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision direct testimony of 12 pages that was previously filed with the Commission in this docket?
I have.
And do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
I do not.
If I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Belser, at this time, I'll move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Greg McGlohorn be read into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. McGlohorn's direct testimony will be entered into the record as if read from the stand.
Mr. McGlohorn, have you prepared a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I have.
Could you please share that with us at this time?
Yes. Good morning, Chair Belser and members of the Commission. The purpose of today's proceeding is to determine the prudence of Dominion Energy South Carolina's gas purchasing policies and practices during the period of August 1st, 2021 through July 31st, 2022, and to determine if the company properly applied its tariff in recovering its gas costs. The company has developed a safe and reliable natural gas system through which we serve our customers. Over time, Dominion Energy South Carolina has seen its natural gas distribution system grow to approximately 10,760 miles of pipeline, which includes approximately 10,327 miles of distribution mains and 434 miles of transmission mains, plus approximately 447,250 service lines. Through these facilities, the company delivers safe, reliable natural gas service to approximately 427,000 factories, businesses, and homes in South Carolina. Dominion Energy South Carolina also owns and operates 2 liquefied natural gas, or LNG, facilities, which allow the storage of natural gas in a liquid form to be used primarily to help meet peak loads on the system and as a backup supply of gas in emergency situations. Firm demand on the company's system has continued to grow, and Dominion Energy South Carolina has consistently improved and expanded its system by adding pipeline facilities to serve its new and existing customers and create operating flexibility on its system. Moreover, the company completed a number of projects to improve system safety, integrity, and reliability. As this commission is aware, Dominion Energy South Carolina's highest priority is to safeguard and protect those individuals who come into contact with the Dominion Energy South Carolina system, including employees, customers, and the public at large. During the review period, the company prudently managed its business operations, which included the purchase and recovery of its gas supplies and administration of the PGA. Therefore, on behalf of Dominion Energy South Carolina, I respectfully request the commission find that the company has recovered its gas costs for the review period consistent with its tariff and commission orders, and that it has purchased its gas supplies and administered the PGA in a prudent and reasonable manner. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Mr. McGlohorn. Ms. Jackson, would you please state your name for the record?
Rose M. Jackson.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy Services Incorporated as the Director of Fuel Commodities.
And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision direct testimony of 15 pages that was previously filed with the commission in this docket?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No, sir.
If I ask you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, sir.
Chair Belzer, at this time I'll move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Rose Jackson be read into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Ms. Jackson's pre-filed direct testimony will be received and put into the record as if given orally from the stand.
And Ms. Jackson, have you also prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 2 exhibits labeled as exhibit numbers RMJ1 and RMJ2 that were previously filed with the commission as attachments to your pre-filed direct testimony in this docket?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No, sir, I do not.
Chair Belzer, I would also move into the record as the, I believe the first hearing composite exhibit, the exhibits attached to Ms. Jackson's direct testimony and labeled as exhibit numbers RMJ1 and RMJ2.
Ms. Jackson's pre-filed exhibits, which were attached to her pre-filed direct testimony and designated as RMJ1 and RMJ2, will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 1 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, sir.
Please share that with us.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Belzer and members of the Commission. My testimony discusses the company's portfolio of gas supply. During the review period, the company's gas asset portfolio relied upon all 3 gas supply options available to it, namely wellhead gas supply, underground storage secured from Southern Natural Gas Company or Southern, and Transcontinental Gas Pipeline or Transco, and liquefied natural gas, also known as LNG. Dominion Energy South Carolina combines these 3 supply options with interstate transportation to meet its firm demand under varying weather conditions at reasonable cost. During the review period, Dominion Energy South Carolina contracted for sufficient supplies of natural gas, provided reliable service to its customers, and adequately and prudently maintained gas, storage, and transportation assets to meet the needs of the system. I respectfully request the Commission find that Dominion Energy South Carolina's cost of gas purchases and asset management were reasonable and prudent for the review period. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Ms. Jackson, have you also prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision rebuttal testimony of 7 pages that was previously filed with the commission in this docket?
Yes, sir.
And do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony?
Yes, sir. I have some corrections.
Okay, would you please share those with us?
Yes, sir. If you will turn to page 1, all these corrections are on line 14. So on line 14, if you will add closing quotation marks after the word program, add opening quotation marks after the word and then add the word provide after the opening quotation marks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jackson. Subject to those changes, if I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, sir.
Chair Belzer, at this time, I move that the pre-filed rebuttal testimony of Rose Jackson as amended be read into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Ms. Jackson's pre-filed rebuttal testimony, as amended, will be received into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Ms. Jackson, have you prepared a summary of your rebuttal testimony?
Yes, sir.
Would you please share that with us at this time?
Thank you. My rebuttal testimony discusses the company's response to recommendations that the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff, or ORS, made in the direct testimony of Ms. Heather M's Rust. First, ORS recommends that the company evaluate the feasibility, cost, and benefits to customers of a natural gas hedging program and provide the results of the evaluation to the Commission, ORS, and other interested parties as part of the company's annual PGA filing in 2023. In my rebuttal testimony, I explained that consistent with Commission Order Number 2012-39, suspending the company's hedging program, the company does not operate a natural gas hedging program at this time, but the company relies on the approved 12-month rolling purchase gas adjustment mechanism and physical gas storage to mitigate price volatility to its customers. Notwithstanding this, the company agrees with the ORS recommendation to evaluate the feasibility, cost, and benefits to customers of a natural gas hedging program and provide the results of the evaluation as part of the annual PGA filing in 2023. Second, ORS recommends that the company agree to provide updates to the Commission and ORS should the current schedule change for the Mountain Valley Pipeline or other projects that the company is monitoring, and that the company agree to provide an update on the status of the MVP project to the Commission and ORS no later than March 31st, 2023. The company agrees to provide the requested updates on the MVP project. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Ms. Smith, would you please state your name for the record?
Jaton R. Smith.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy Services Incorporated as the Manager of Regulation.
And Ms. Smith, have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision direct testimony of 7 pages that was previously filed with the Commission in this docket?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No, I don't.
So if I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Chair Belzer, at this time I move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Jaton Smith be read into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Ms. Smith's pre-filed direct testimony will be received into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Ms. Smith, have you also prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 2 exhibits labeled as exhibit numbers JRS-1 and JRS-2 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed direct testimony in this docket?
Yes.
And do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No.
Chair Belzer, I would also move into the record as the next hearing composite exhibit the exhibits attached to Ms. Smith's direct testimony and labeled as exhibit numbers JRS-1 and JRS-2.
The exhibits attached to Ms. Smith's pre-filed direct testimony labeled JRS-1 and JRS-2 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 2 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes.
Would you please share that with us at this time?
Good morning, Chair Belzer and members of the Commission. I am appearing today to support the company's gas cost recovery mechanism and to support the cost of gas data for the period under review in this proceeding, which is August 1st, 2021 through July 31st, 2022. In administering the company's cost of gas recovery mechanism, Dominion Energy South Carolina calculates the gas cost factor for each customer class each month using a rolling 12-month forecast of both demand and commodity costs. The company reviews the demand charge cost of gas allocation factors each year during the PGA proceeding and updates the factors to reflect current forecast parameters. These allocations are based on a weighting of 50% forecast sales and 50% forecast peak design day demand. Based on the latest annual sales and demand forecast, the new DCOG allocation factors will be 67.43% for residential, 27.72% for small general service and medium general service, and 4.85% for large general service usage groups. DESC respectfully requests that these new DCOG allocation factors be approved by the Commission and made effective for the first billing cycle of January 2023. Exhibit JRS-1 accurately reflects administration of the PGA recovery mechanism as approved by the Commission, and Exhibit JRS-2 shows a summary of the monthly forecast of gas cost components and the resulting monthly over-under collection balances. The end-of-period balance of zero shows that the forecasted gas cost factors would eliminate any projected over-under collection amount by the end of the forecast period ending August 2023. During the review period, Dominion Energy South Carolina properly administered the purchase gas adjustment and correctly adjusted the gas cost recovery factors for each customer class in accordance with the terms of order number 2006-679 as modified by order number 2009-910. In addition, Dominion Energy South Carolina recovered its gas costs consistent with applicable tariffs and commission orders. Accordingly, Dominion Energy South Carolina respectfully requests the Commission find that the company has recovered its gas costs for the review period consistent with its tariffs and commission orders, and that it has purchased its gas supplies and administered the PGA in a prudent and reasonable manner. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Chair Belzer, the panel is available to the ORS and the Commission for questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Gissendanner. Office of Regulatory Staff?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for the witnesses?
Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Powers, and then Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Ms. McLaurin, the liquid natural gas facilities, I'm yet figuring how you change cubic feet to decatherms, but my real question is about not cybersecurity, but physical security for such a large storage facilities. And I know Dominion has excellent security issues, excellent security devices with all you have in Virginia with Pentagon and all that sort of stuff being part of your service area. What sort of security do you have for such storage facilities that with all the crazy people in the world these days?
Well, I'm not a security expert as far as that facility, but I know that we have fences. I know we have locks. We have various SCADA and telemetry that would sound alarms if there was anything out of the ordinary happening there. As far as details of the security for the facility, I would have to defer that to our security group. But I do know that we respond to the TSA security directives, where we evaluate all of our facilities and identify critical facilities and then determine what necessary protections would be required. And I do know that the LNG plants did fall under that assessment.
Okay. You have fence? Do you have cameras?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Ms. Jackson. Good morning. Good morning. I know that Dominion has in the past, for lack of a better phrase, been burned in some hedging situations. Is that some of the reluctance that is there now for seeking or having a hedging program at the present time?
No, sir. At the time when DESC, then SCENG, suspended its hedging program, it was a collaborative discussion amongst ORS and the commission at that time. And the concern was a hedging program is designed to reduce volatility. It's not designed to capture the lowest prices or to beat the market, if you will. And I think that becomes some of the misconception that some folks have about a financial hedging program. So at the time we suspended our program, at the time we closed out all of our hedges that were in place at that time, the cost of the program was roughly $58 million. So that was the concern that was raised by ORS and the company and the commission at that time. So when we looked at other tools in our toolbox that we could use to help reduce the volatility but have no cost or low cost, we were already relying on our physical storage where we inject in the summer months and we can withdraw in the winter. And we also have the 12-month rolling PGA, which helps smooth the volatility to our customers of any pricing fluctuations. And those tools, other than the demand charges associated with storage, they don't have those costs associated with it. Any financial hedging program will have costs associated with it.
Okay. If hedging were successful, it would benefit customers, would it not?
It would look, if the hedging program had gains for that portion of the gas supply that we hedged, it would show a credit to the cost of gas. Okay. However, when we operated a hedging program, we never hedged 100% because you always have that balancing issue with weather fluctuations. So we'll have to look at what percentage also.
So it's a little bit like rolling the dice at times.
I wouldn't say it's rolling the dice. I would say it's more like an insurance plan.
Insurance plan.
So what you're trying to do is you're trying to prevent the highest prices, but by doing that, sometimes you prevent from participating in the low prices too. So you're just trying to smooth volatility.
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Good morning. Ms. Jackson, I'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit more about segmentation? I think I probably asked this question before, but already forgotten what I thought I might have known.
Okay. Segmentation, the easiest way to explain it is if you think of a pipeline as a straw. So you have the straw that goes across and you can input gas supply on both ends of the straw. You pay one demand charge for that straw, but you're adding gas at both ends of it. So as long as they don't cross and that middle part of the straw can accommodate gas coming from both directions, you can double up your volumes to deliver to that intersecting point. So basically you get double the delivery for one price. So in essence, you can lower your cost by half or whatever volume it will allow you to bring in.
Okay. And I think I understood you to say that it's getting more difficult to do that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. As the pipelines are fully subscribed and you start to see more, I'll use Transco as an example, you start to see more bidirectional flow. Historically, what Transco had on their system is you would flow gas from the Gulf Coast all the way up to New York. Now you're seeing a lot of gas come both directions because of the Marcellus and the Utica regions that bring supply onto their system. You see gas flowing backwards. So that null point or that intersecting point that we talk about with segmentation just happens to fall right around the South Carolina, somewhere between the Elba Express takeoff between Georgia and South Carolina and the North Carolina-South Carolina line. So we're right there.
Okay. So LNG and the trucking it into Sally. So just wondering, so there's an LNG export facility at Elba Island in the Savannah River.
Yes, sir.
And just wondering, is there any possibility of purchasing LNG from that facility?
We have purchased LNG from that facility in the past, and we have delivered it through Carolina Gas Transmission. We have firm capacity that moves from Elba into CGT. And there is a trucking facility there, but there have been 2 times that other entities have tried to establish a trucking service from Elba, and it has been denied. So at this point in time, we can't truck, but we have purchased and delivered gas from Elba Island.
Okay. And I would assume that the way things are these days, that they probably get a lot more money for LNG that ends up going outside the U.S.
Yes, sir. It was so funny when Elba Island was reactivated in, let me get my dates straight, in early 2000s, like 2003 timeline. It was designed to be an import facility, and we would bring in so much gas from Trinidad. And since that time, when we saw the revolution of shale gas and fracking, now that is an export facility. And it was expanded, but you see gas flowing the opposite direction, because Elba Express was designed to move gas from Elba Island into Transco, and now it's been reversed.
Right. Yeah. I kind of remember the time frame, and that was going on. I actually visited that facility one time. It's a interesting operation for sure.
It has expanded tremendously.
Yeah. Okay. So have you all looked into the possibility of adding a liquefaction facility at the Sally location?
Yes, sir. We're looking at upgrades to our existing LNG facilities. We're also looking at the potential for a new LNG facility or new CNG facility, new propane air, and we're also in discussions with a number of RNG developers as well.
Okay. And I was noticing that you have several services that are expiring in 2023, and it's actually as soon as March 31st of 2023. Are you in the process of extending those or renegotiating, working those out, whatever the case may be?
Yes, sir. We just had a meeting with Southern Natural, and the reason you see those contracts expiring, we agreed to extend those contracts as part of the Southern Natural 2018 rate case. And also as part of that rate case settlement, they are required to file new rates that are effective September 1 of 2024. So they have stated in that meeting that they plan to start conducting what we call pre-filing settlement discussions. So before they have to make that filing in 2024, we'll work as a community of shippers and the pipeline to try to reach settlement rates. And as part of those settlement discussions, all the shippers have to agree to extend their contracts to the same period. So that way we're not at a disadvantage if others extend and some do not.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. McGlowan. So you mentioned the inline inspections, and that this is the first time that you all have been involved in those. Is that I've heard of something called a smart pig. Is that part of the same process as a smart pig?
Yes, it's the same process. So ILI stands for inline inspection, and smart pig. PIG is an acronym for Pipeline Inspection Gauge, and it's basically a way to use instrumentation inside the pipe while it's in service to assess the condition of the pipeline.
Okay. So why is it taking so long to start doing that?
Well, we have been actually doing it for probably the last approximately 6 to 7 years, and the biggest reason why it hasn't been done on all of our transmission lines is that all of them are not piggable, what they refer to as piggable. So we have to retrofit a lot of these pipelines in order to make them piggable. Secondly, some pipelines are not easily inspected with that method because of their size. So it's only a practical method of inspection for pipelines of a certain diameter. And for a lot of these retrofit projects, they can take a while, but I would like to point out that the assessments that we do for inline inspection are more along the lines of a voluntary basis. So we're required to assess all of our transmission pipelines on periodic intervals, and we currently use other methods as our compliance method, external corrosion direct assessment primarily. So the inline inspections that we are performing are above and beyond the regulatory requirement.
Okay. and I think you indicated that 77% had been inspected that is capable of being inspected in that manner. So how much is not capable, I guess, of being inspected in that manner, the ILI?
Right. Well, as you said, 77% of our transmission lines are currently capable of, we have inspected 77%, 118 miles, and as I said in my testimony, we have a total of 434 miles of transmission mains. So, pardon me, bear with me a second. $118 miles is the total that we have inspected so far. So the remainder from the 434 to the 118, some of that would be piggable and some of that would not be piggable. But we have pigged 77% of the pipeline that is piggable. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm sorry if I got off track there.
Okay. That helps. Thanks. So the sewer cross-bore inspections, and you discussed the risk model. Can you talk about that some more?
Yes, the risk model is a way for us to target the areas that we're going to perform those assessments, and it looks at things such as what year was the gas lines in that area installed, were they installed prior to or at the same time as the homes that were constructed, or did they come along later? Also looks at other factors such as what the method of construction was that was used. If it was primarily open trench, that would result in a lower risk area. If it was primarily directional, or I should say any type of bore, that would increase the risk as an example. If the gas lines were installed after the homes were constructed, that would increase the risk of sewer crossbore. So we use that to target and help us prioritize the neighborhoods that we inspect.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all I have this time.
Okay.
Commissioner Caston?
Good news is you pretty much answered all the questions I had with Commissioner Thomas. And good morning. And Mr. McGlohorn, I just put it together because when I was reading the stuff earlier, I said, I know that name. Then when you came in, I said, I know that face. And I guess for everyone else to know, I remember when you were, I think with DHEC and with BP Barber. So it took me this long to figure it out.
Yes, Commissioner Caston, and I remember when you were with SJWD Water District too.
You didn't age quite as much as me, but that's okay. But it's good to see you, and good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Relative to the Mountain Valley Pipeline project, you talk about capacity projected and all, and it has experienced delays due to ongoing legal challenges, I guess regarding permits, and I don't know if that was wetlands or what. Do you know what the status of that is now or where that stands?
Yes, sir. I can give you an update. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit Court issued 2 orders back in January and February of 2022. The first order was related to the Jefferson National Forest crossing, and they stated that MVP had an inadequate review of actual sedimentation and erosion impacts of the pipeline. They also said that there was premature authorization of the use of conventional bore method for stream crossings, and there was a failure to comply with the Forest Service 2012 planning rule. So MVP is currently working with the U.S. Forestry Service to make sure that they are in compliance with those deficiencies, and they will go back before the Fourth Circuit Court. The second order that was issued from the Fourth Circuit Court on February 3rd was related to the biological opinion. It was vacated and remanded back, and they had asked the Fish and Wildlife Service to analyze the impacts of 2 fish species, excuse me, which were the Roanoke log perch and the candy darter. But also, as part of the remand, they also asked that the Fish and Wildlife Service consider the impact to the bat species that were identified in the filing, which is the Indiana bat and the long-eared bat. One other line item in the order also states that it requires any other new species to be addressed. So MVP is working with the Fish and Wildlife Service to address and update the filings associated with those species, and will go back before the court. They are still hopeful that this pipeline project will be in service by the second half of 2023. But it's litigation, so there is no definitive timeline.
I'm thinking. Okay, thank you. And I think you answered, Mr. McGlohorn, most of my questions, and very similar, trying to figure how to pick these lines. And I was trying to do that math that you were going through. Not sure I did it at all. But it seems like it's something like 434 minus 1 whatever, and it's about the difference. So there is an ongoing, am I understanding that there will be an ongoing effort just, to inspect the quality of lines, whether that means retrofit or I don't know how you guys do it, but I understand the challenges. So will there be an ongoing effort to just check them all out if you can?
Yes, Commissioner Caston, we have a ILI prioritization plan that we work with our pipeline integrity management group to schedule. And we have all of our transmission lines listed on that document, and it also indicates a priority of which ones we would like to do first, and it also indicates which ones have not been retrofitted, which ones could be piggable if retrofitted, and which ones would still, with the current technology, not really be piggable at all. And by the way, all that is also included on our annual PHMSA transmission report. So forgive me if I don't have that with me right now, or I could spit those numbers out a lot easier. But yes, the answer is we do have plans to continue our inline inspection program, to inspect lines to continue adding to the lines that are inspected, and then also to come back to the ones that we've already inspected, say 7 years ago, and begin that cycle again for round 2 of the ones that have already been inspected. So I would say it is a multi-year project, and it is an ongoing project.
Never ends.
That's right.
And in the cross-bore project that you talked about, and when I was reading about it, and the algorithm you're talking about, I'm assuming, takes all those things you talked about in consideration. But is that specifically looking at potential opportunities just for sewer line bores that may go through a gas line? Is that the only thing that could potentially bore through a gas line?
Well, the gas lines are actually boring through the sewer lines.
Okay.
And so what we're trying to do is find those. And there are other utilities that could also bore through sewer lines. But when those create a blockage and the, say, homeowner calls a plumber and they run some type of device down that line to clear the blockage, which they may not know is a utility. The other ones just result in maybe loss of cable TV service or maybe a loss of water service. In our case, it could create a gas leak inside those sewer lines, which could then be a way for gas to migrate into homes. So it's a very low probability of finding those sewer crossbores, but they do exist. And the potential consequence, if one were to be damaged and result in a leak, the consequence could be high, which is why we proactively go out and try to find those.
Well, it's amazing how many people can hit your stuff, but I didn't think about y'all being one of the ones to hit our stuff. Well, I don't have stuff anymore, so.
Well, the good news is, Commissioner Caston, those are all legacy issues. Any service lines or gas mains that we would install today, even if bored, we have measures in place to ensure that we did not create a sewer cross bore. So the ones that we were trying to remediate were ones that were, in most cases, created several decades ago and have most likely been a latent issue that we are trying to discover before it becomes an emergency type situation, if there are any. As you saw in the testimony, we didn't find any during the review period last year.
And along those lines, is Dominion, do you guys mostly do that yourself, or do you contract that type work out?
We manage the program, but we do utilize a contractor to implement the program for us.
Is that mostly directional drilling or open cut or both, or how do you do it?
Well, as far as the installing of the gas lines or the finding of the cross bores?
Installing the gas lines.
Yes, for most new construction, we do rely on contract crews to do that with company inspectors to ensure that it's done the proper way. If that answers. And we do have company crews, but they primarily do maintenance and repair activities.
Finally, last question. I think this was in your testimony where it's talking about more capacity needed, interstate capacity, inability to rely on segmentation, which you explained, and 3 interstate natural gas pipelines that serve DESC have indicated that they are fully subscribed. And again, these kind of things, at least in my brief tenure here, seem to be a recurring theme. And I kind of always ask this similar question, but what's the plan forward? I mean, how do we mitigate this or fix this?
I think you've probably heard a lot of discussions with Senator Manchin and the other senator from West Virginia. They were trying to expedite the permitting process for Mountain Valley Pipeline. That would also affect any other new pipeline projects, but that has not been approved yet. So subject to some type of new permitting process that prevents ongoing continuous litigation. We used to be able to say that an interstate pipeline project, and Chair Belzer was familiar with this, we could say we see a project that we're participating in, it's going for pre-filing at FERC, estimated in-service date was 3 years. That was roughly 12 years ago. Then we pushed it out to 5 years. We're heading into our 8th year with MVP. And it's not because of the FERC process, because the FERC pre-filing process was designed to expedite the construction timeline of a pipeline project. Now it's related to ongoing litigation. And as I stated before, there is no specified time for litigation to be completed. And so what happens is once one permit is approved, it's been litigated again. So we have to go back, the pipelines have to go back. So there's so much uncertainty associated with the time. And we hear a lot in the news about we want to help our European allies by shipping more LNG. That can't happen today because it would require us to expand existing LNG terminals. We can't even get the pipelines to deliver gas that we need here in the U.S. So permitting an LNG terminal and pipeline capacity to deliver that terminal, it would take 10 years. So that is the concern that I have is natural gas is going to support our conversion from coal-fired generation to renewable generation. But we need more pipeline capacity. We have plenty of supply in this country. We just have to be able to move it from the areas in which it's naturally produced to the areas where we have growing demand. And we're very fortunate in the Southeast that we have growing demand. So what we're doing on the LDC side or the local distribution side is we're looking at alternatives like I mentioned earlier. We may need to upgrade our LNG facilities that we have currently. We may need to install new LNG facilities, CNG facilities, propane air. We're also looking at contracting for on-system renewable natural gas. All these are being considered, but short of changing the litigation and the permitting process, I don't know how you get a more definitive timeline to build new pipeline infrastructure, and it is needed in this country.
So, in your opinion, what is causing the greatest delays, the permitting process or the litigation?
The litigation.
And where's the litigation coming from?
There are special interest groups that when a permit is approved, whether it be a federal permit or a local permit or a state permit, they can go in and litigate that the permit had insufficient evidence or insufficient analysis. So it has to go before the appeals court process, and that takes time.
And who is they?
The special interest groups, whether it be an environmentalist group or someone like that, that's saying that the permitting process was insufficient, that there was not sufficient analysis done before the permit was issued.
Okay. Well, I can't help you there. I think that's all the questions I have. I'm not trying to overlook you, Ms. Smith, but I just don't have anything. Thank you very much.
Commissioner C. Williams?
Thank you. Ms. Smith, I think I'll start with you. On JS, and good morning. On
Good morning.
JRS 2, it looks like under collection is forecasted to grow until about January of 2023. Is that correct?
And that is correct. Typically, we do, our under collection does tend to grow in the winter months. And so that's what's reflected in that JRS -2. And one of, one of the drivers for that is the cost of gas prices.
Does that suggest that you think that the cost of gas is not going to continue increasing after that point?
So in our forecast, our monthly forecast updates, we do use a forward-looking 12-month, NYMEX price of gas. And if you look in on column 1 on JRS-2, this is showing the projections for the commodity costs, which we do expect for it to start to decline after the winter, this upcoming winter. And so that's kind of what's reflected in the JRS-2. And our over and under balances are changing as a result of that.
That makes sense. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Ms. Jackson, I have to shift to talk to you, so I'll, Ms. Jackson, this may be early, but I wondered if you've begun to see any impact of the demand efficiency programs that you instituted earlier this year. And I kind of, more importantly, is this next year, is this where you might report to us on those efficiency programs related to gas?
Commissioner Williams, I won't be the appropriate person to report on that.
Okay.
But it may be too early. I don't know if, Ms. Smith, could you report on that?
I do not have a report on that. Our DSM group is working to implement those energy efficiency programs. I know that their goal is to have at least one measure per program implemented by the end of this year. And we will be filing our first annual update on the DSM programs by July 31st of next year.
Okay. So we would not anticipate information for this, July of next year. We could expect some updates on that at this proceeding next year.
Those updates will come through the DSM proceeding. That's a separate proceeding.
Okay. But might we see the influence in this hearing?
That's possible. Depending on how many programs they have up and running at that time, you may see some impact of that.
As a new commissioner still, I'm looking to see how everything weaves together, and hence that question. But it's okay if it's totally off base to hear that as well, but okay. Ms. Jackson. I want to talk a little bit about hedging and price volatility and the agreement that you have brought to us to look at that. Will that be done in-house or will you use outside resources?
We have not determined that yet, Commissioner Williams. Will evaluate both options.
Okay.
And it'll probably, if we decide to go with outside consultant, there will still have to be input and some assistance from internal folks as well.
Of course. Okay. And will that, as I understand it, that's going to look at financial hedging.
Yes, ma'am.
Will it also look at physical storage and purchasing mechanisms?
We have those today, and as I stated before, the physical storage operates not only to help us to reduce price volatility, but it's also for reliability. So irregardless of whether or not we would try to use that for mitigating price volatility, we have physical storages to back up our flowing gas supply in the event it's interrupted. So we're paying for those storages. It just helps mitigate because of the timeline when we inject versus when we withdraw. And of course, we have the 12-month rolling PGA, which also helps mitigate price volatility also.
Okay. Would one of the factors in determining whether you have a consultant help you with this analysis relating to hedging be your independence in doing it yourself, or what will the factors be related to?
To be honest, at this point in time, Commissioner Williams, we have not had time to sit down as a team to discuss what are the factors, or even meet with ORS to say what are the factors or what are the issues that we need to address, but that's forthcoming.
Okay. I think I can look at Mr. McGlohorn this way. We're good. My interest was piqued about your discussion in your testimony about the 3,500 feet of 10-inch steel pipeline in Columbia to serve an industrial customer. Just from a real-world economic development sort of perspective, I'm guessing from the way you presented it in your testimony, you can't give a lot of details, and I'm not asking for that. I think what I'm wanting to hear is some discussion about the relationship of these kind of extensions and economic development.
Yes, some of these projects that were listed in my testimony are to serve residential and commercial, but some are also to serve industrial customers. And so we receive requests on a weekly basis for potential service to industrial prospects, economic development prospects. Some end up on our system and some choose to go elsewhere, but it is a constant thing that we evaluate on probably a weekly basis, is looking at different economic development prospects. And some of the ones that we ended up serving are listed in the testimony. Not all of them, just a representative sample.
And I'll be honest, I've kind of forgotten why I was curious about the one in Columbia, but can you share any more about that one?
Yes, let me find it in my testimony. I do see one in Sumter that was included and one near Camden. There was a project in Columbia that was also listed, but it was more of a system redundancy project.
Okay.
I think it's the one that is it the 6,600 feet of 12-inch steel pipeline and 5,600 feet of 6-inch between Interstate 20 and Columbia International University. Is that the one?
I don't think so, but I really was more interested in the economic development discussion, so I'll just let that one lie as it is.
Okay.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you. One more question here for you, Ms. Jackson. You discussed the Mountain Valley Pipeline and that that would not add increased capacity for DESC. Can you talk about that a little bit, or does that relate to that segmentation sort of a thing? Or
It's actually a little bit easier than the, excuse me, segmentation. If you look on the list of contracts, you'll see that we added some Transco capacity on the Southeastern Trail project. And what Mountain Valley Pipeline will do is it will flow gas into that Southeastern Trail project and bring it down to South Carolina. And what it does is it gives us access to that Marcellus Shale region, which is trading at lower prices than what we're currently buying in the Gulf. So that is really the benefit of some of these pipeline projects such as Mountain Valley Pipeline. Yes, the cost of the pipeline capacity has gone up, but when you look at the cost of the commodity or the supply component, it's lower. So when you combine the reduced supply cost versus the higher transportation cost, it's at times competitive with what we pay today. So that's, I think, why it's so important that we try to access more of that region.
okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Commissioners, any questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Urban?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Jackson, could I follow up with you for a moment on the Mountain Valley Pipeline issue?
Yes, sir.
One of the, I understand that the litigation has been a big obstacle in slowing down the project. One of the thoughts that I had about it, I worked for years as a circuit judge and sent a lot of complex cases to mediation. And then when I retired from the bench, I was a mediator. And I'm wondering if your legal team has tried to reach out to the other side of this litigation and reach common ground through a mediation process. Has that been explored?
I'm not exactly sure because it would be Mountain Valley Pipeline that would have to do that. I know they are in ongoing discussions with the other parties to try to ensure that they provide sufficient information on their amended filing, but I'm not sure the process, any other processes that they've engaged in.
I would suggest, since you kind of reached out for help on that issue, I would suggest that you talk with your legal team because the Fourth Circuit Court.
Commissioner Urban, we've lost your audio. Please check your microphone. Commissioner Urban, we can't hear you. Commissioner Urban, do you want to log off and log back on? We're at ease for a second, y'all.
Okay.
Just bear with us.
Madam Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes, Commissioner Urban, we can hear you.
All right, could I pick up with Ms. Jackson again, please?
Yes, sir. Let me just do this. We had a technical glitch. We are back on now. Commissioner Urban is on audio. We can hear him. Commissioners are still in the hearing room, and please resume, Commissioner Urban.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Wanted to complete my thought on the appeals process at the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. I believe you indicated that some of the litigation is, if not most of it, is going through that process. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
They do have a mediation program, and I would suggest that your legal team might look into requesting a mediation, and hopefully the other parties would agree and see if they cannot work out some common ground so that this project can be completed. It would serve the customers well because the cost of gas has been, as you know, one of the big drivers of rate increases. And under our fuel statute in South Carolina, of course, it has to all be passed along to consumers. So it would certainly, it would help our, not only our residential, but our business and commercial ratepayers to get cheaper gas. And I believe the pipeline is, what, 80% complete already?
It's estimated to be somewhere between 94 and 95% complete.
That's even further along than I thought. So, you know, I would suggest mediation if you could get all those parties around the table with a mediator and commit to trying to work through some of these issues. That might just work to reach some kind of global settlement. So you might want to look into that. I know that at one time, one of our retired judges in South Carolina was the court mediator for the Fourth Circuit. I don't know if he's still serving that capacity, but it's a good program. A lot of complex litigation is resolved that way. And so I would hope that your legal team might look into that option. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Commissioners, any other questions? Good morning. How are y'all this morning? Ms. Jackson, with regard to your rebuttal testimony and addressing the recommendations from the Office of Regulatory Staff, at this point, the recommendation on the hedging program, that's just an evaluation, is it not? That is not implementing a hedging program, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct, just to do an evaluation.
What do you envision an evaluation including, or how would that be constructed?
Chair Belzer, as I stated, we have not even had the time to sit down with our internal team or to discuss in detail with ORS what type of components we need to look at or what specific items we need to cover. We can definitely go back and look at our previous hedging program and some of the other hedging programs within Dominion Energy to compare, but we just don't have the details worked out yet.
And I don't know if this is doable in an evaluation, but do you know if it would include a cost-benefit analysis?
We will certainly include the cost associated or estimated cost associated with the program and any potential benefits to customers as well.
You addressed the state of the gas market in your direct testimony, I believe it was. And where are we with regard to where we sit today? Well, let's look at the review period, where we are today, and what do y'all see for the next period of next year or so?
We are sitting in very unprecedented times. As I stated in my direct testimony, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia has set off events that have impacted not just that region of the world, but also our region as well. What has happened is that Russia is not exporting natural gas to the European countries as they have in the past. Therefore, there is a much greater demand for LNG to go into Europe. So prices in Europe are at all-time highs, and therefore when you look at gas prices around the world, they are elevated. Here in the U.S., we still have the lowest natural gas prices in the world. However, as I stated earlier, our problem is deliverability. We don't have new interstate pipeline capacity to deliver the gas that we have that is naturally produced, or there's a natural geological formation here in the U.S. for us to access. So it doesn't do any good to produce the gas if you can't move it. And so that is really what I'm concerned most about, is when you look at, we don't have a supply source on Transco Zone 4 and 5, which is where we deliver gas to in South Carolina. And so our prices for Transco Zone 5 delivered have been higher than Transco Zone 6, which is New York. So we're in an unprecedented time. We've also seen, what I talked about in my direct testimony, basis differentials that I've never seen in a shoulder or a summer month.
Tell me what you mean by basis differential.
It's the difference between where the NYMEX contract is traded in at Henry Hub, which is located in Louisiana, but you look at what gas trades for as it's delivered into South Carolina. So it's that geographical difference, and we're paying roughly, we contract for our firm receipt points on Southern and Transco. We're paying around $3 more than the Henry Hub price in September. So we've never seen that kind of what we call a basis blowout, if you will. We haven't seen that type of basis blowout in years and years, and I have never seen it in a shoulder month like that. So that is my concern, is that we continue to have growing demand. And as Commissioner Williams talked about, there are DSM programs we're trying to implement, but on key periods of time, especially in the wintertime, you won't get the benefit of those DSM programs on the coldest days of the year, because we're using our equipment on a 3 to 5 day period at its maximum limits. So as we continue to grow our firm customer base, we're going to need more and more supply, which means either we have to build it through LNG, CNG, or propane air on system, or we got to deliver it on an interstate pipeline. And I'm amazed that we are sitting here today, almost 8 years into the Mountain Valley Pipeline project.
Well, let's talk about the what you just discussed in the future. And if we can't get the gas supply, at what point are the customers going to be prohibited from signing up for gas?
Right now, we are looking at making modifications to the Dominion Energy South Carolina tariff in the upcoming gas rate case that will allow our industrial customers to have firm transportation on our distribution system, but they will be required to go out and contract for their own firm transportation upstream. That allows them the flexibility to negotiate with multiple parties to get that deliverability. But we're looking on our traditional firm customer, that residential and commercial, we're going to have to add another tranche of supply, if you will, around that 2028 to 2030 timeframe.
But adding supply, if you can't get it here, what is that going to do?
We're going to
and what are the commercial customers? They're going to be using the same pipes. How are they going to get their own gas if they're going to go out and contract for it?
There are shippers that have capacity today that can offer different options to an industrial or commercial customer. It's existing capacity that they can go out and contract for. But what we'll have to do as a distribution company is look at either making modifications to our existing LNG plant that would give us greater output, or we could invest in another LNG facility. We're looking at propane air facilities, CNG facilities, or with renewable natural gas that is produced on system, so you don't need the interstate pipeline capacity to bring it into the system. It's already here.
On your RMJ2, there is a calculation for the reserve percentage, and that's for the is that for the winter period?
That's our design day, so that will be the coldest day that we can anticipate.
And you have a reserve percentage there of 6.16%.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what that 6.16% represents.
That reflects capacity on Carolina Gas Transmission, where the majority of our customers are behind. 6.16% are 25,491 decatherms above what our design day would be. So on an annual basis, we work with our resource planning group to forecast using the coldest day in history, and then they take our current customer class, numbers of customers by class, and they calculate by area point what our design day, which is going to be the coldest day we anticipate on our system, what kind of volumes we would need.
So based on this, with a 6.16% reserve, Dominion feels like it has sufficient supply to serve firm customers during the winter on the coldest day,
Yes,
what's
ma'am.
anticipated to be in the winter. How does that 6.16% compare to, say, I think it's a little bit of an increase from last year. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. If you look, we go out and we look at, we get the current class of customers, but then we're looking at historical growth and future growth projections. So our design day actually grew a little bit less than what we had seen over the last 3 to 5 years. And that's why you see just a small difference there.
Okay, so it's based on the design day, not on, I mean, the increase was because the design day changed, not what the
Not our
usage is.
capacity.
Okay,
Well,
capacity.
we did acquire 10,000 decatherms of capacity in an open season, so that also helped as well.
Okay. Is that, that 6.16, is that a reasonable reserve?
Reserve margin, I get asked that question a lot in different jurisdictions. And reserve margin, it's hard to say what is the appropriate reserve margin because you have to look at where you're sitting today. And I mean, traditionally, I could go out and look at 5 years or 10 years out, and I would have a good estimate of how long it would take for a new pipeline project to be built or a new LNG plant to be built. But we're faced with some of the same permitting issues on a state and local level. So now we're having to look further out. You know, instead of being a 3-year or 4-year time frame, we're looking at 7 to 10-year time frame. So what you're probably going to see in the future, especially with interstate pipeline projects, is that we're going to have to come in and ask for a greater reserve margin because of the uncertainty associated with how long it's going to take to get that next project in service. So based on what we see today, we're looking for our next supply option to be needed somewhere between 2028 and 2030. Now, we're evaluating several different supply options. One of them is interstate pipeline capacity. We have ongoing discussions with our existing and any potential pipeline supplier. But working with Mr. McGlohorn's engineering team, we're also looking at other options such as LNG, CNG, RNG, propane air. Right now, we're looking at any option we have for supply.
In fact, I would say going into this winter, we will be relying on CNG. I think we're looking at it in the Myrtle Beach area, and we have historically in the last couple of years utilized small-scale mobile LNG for peak shaving, also looking to expand the use of those technologies going forward.
What is small-scale mobile LNG?
It is if you imagine a tanker truck with
Well, I'm thinking of something with wheels on it. That's,
right.
But
It would have a trailer with LNG in it with a vaporizer attached to it. So it would effectively act as a remote source of gas.
so you take that to an area and somehow inject it into the line?
Yes, that's correct. But it has limited capabilities. It would not have the storage or vaporization rates that a large-scale LNG facility would have. But for smaller needs, it does work well.
What kind of permitting do you need to do that?
It was limited permitting for that one because it's essentially just a tractor trailer backed up to an injection point, essentially a flange connection to our natural gas system. So it was relatively simple, unlike a large scale plant, permanent plant.
And I don't know if this is who is appropriate for, Ms. Jackson or Ms. Smith, but do y'all have a projection of the cost of gas factor over the next year? I mean, do you expect that that's going to increase? We get the monthly cost reports and requests when things need to go up. Are we going to continue to see that, do you think?
Yes, so that's actually shown on my exhibit JRS-2.
Okay.
In column 2, there's a billing commodity cost per therm. And so this is what we are actually, this is actually what we're billing currently. And what this exhibit is doing, it is basically saying if we were to leave our current billing factor the same, it's showing that our under collection balance that we have at the end of August would zero out. That first column is showing what the projected NYMEX prices are. And so there is where we're showing that we're seeing a decrease there. But because we do forecast using a rolling 12-month, this would leave our current billing cost the same, and then just show that we're basically zeroing out our under-over collection balance. So your initial question, this doesn't show what our billing factor would where our billing factor would change, but it does show the change in the projected cost of gas or NYMEX prices.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure if this is who gets this one, but I presume that y'all have reviewed ORS's testimony. And in Ms. Drew's testimony, there were a number of instances where there was interruption to service during the review period. Is that correct? Not to firm customers, but to, I reckon, your interruptible customers.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm trying to get an idea because there were some days where it seemed that the interruption may have been due to weather and temperature, where the interruption on that day that there were interruptions and the temperature for that day was significant or lower than what the average was. But there were some where the temperature was not either right at the norm or just a degree or two difference one way or the other. And so I was curious as to, did weather impact those interruptions?
Weather is always a factor when we interrupt interruptible customers. What we've also seen, Chair Belzer, is that we have had a number of operational flow orders on both Transco and Southern. So it's not just our local forecast, but what's happening along the entire pipeline system. And so, as I talked about earlier, especially on Transco's system where they have bidirectional flow of gas, it has been very difficult for them to balance their system. They have added a lot of new bidirectional flow contracts, and they have not added any new physical storage or reserve storage to help balance their system. So we are being faced with a brand new type of operational flow order, which we call bracketed. In the past, in the wintertime, we would have the type of flow orders, operational flow orders, that would say you have to bring in the amount of gas that you anticipate your customers to use. You can't be short, because that would jeopardize the pipeline. Now we're getting told by Transco you have bracketed, which means you can't be long and you can't be short. So you have to be in between. And if you don't, then you're going to pay a high penalty. So when we get tasked with being under those operational flow orders, that also goes into consideration when we have to interrupt our interruptible customers. But once again, our firm sales volumes are growing. So interruptibles pay a much lower cost for that service because they have a lower priority of service. So when our firm customers need that capacity, they get it first. So therefore, they're interrupted.
Okay,
The
thank
interruptibles are interrupted.
Mr. McGlohorn, I'm sorry. You state in your direct testimony, and also you stated in your summary, and this is something that has plagued me over the years. You make the statement that during the review period, the company prudently managed its business operations with regard to gas. Tell me how you make that, because aren't y'all asking the commission to make a determination that the company prudently? So, I mean, it seems like you've answered the question for us. Not trying to be argumentative, but it's a conclusion, and I want the basis for your conclusion that the company prudently managed.
Chair Belzer, I suppose, I guess that would be our opinion. To the best of our abilities, we've tried to prudently manage, and ultimately it would be up to the commission.
This isn't the first time that's appeared in testimony, Mr. McGlohorn, so it's just always tickled me. That, and it's not the only area of, it's not the only industry that we hear that too, so. Okay, but you agree with, would you agree with me that that determination is basically this commission's determination
Yes, we
of prudency?
Yes, Chair Belzer, as stated in my testimony, we would respectfully request that the commission find that the company has recovered our gas costs for the review period in a prudent and reasonable manner.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not picking on you. I get tickled sometimes when I read testimony. Commissioners, any further questions of this panel? Any redirect, Mr. Gissendanner?
No redirect. This concludes desk case in chief.
Thank you, Mr. Gissendanner. Panelists, thank you for your testimony today. You may stand down. Let's take about a 10-minute break as we set up for the next panel. Let's return at, if I can get my phone to come on. Well, 13-minute break. 11:35, please. Good morning, and we're back on air, on live stream. We are in the hearing in docket number 2022-5-G. It is the annual review, purchase gas adjustment and gas purchasing policies of Dominion Energy, South Carolina. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. Present virtually, we have Commissioner Irvin. Present in the hearing room, we have Commissioner J. Williams, Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner C. Williams, Commissioner Caston, and Chair Belser. We have concluded with Dominion's case, and now we recognize the Office of Regulatory Staff.
Madam Chair, ORS calls Daniel Sullivan and Heather Druss to the stand as a panel. I will be presenting Mr. Sullivan, and Mr. Huber will be presenting Ms. Druss.
Thank you. I'll ask the court reporter to swear the witnesses.
Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Good morning. Mr. Sullivan, can you please state your full name for the record?
My name is Daniel Sullivan.
And by whom are you employed, and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff as the Director of the Audit Department.
Are you the same Daniel Sullivan who pre-filed 7 pages of direct testimony in this docket on October 6, 2022?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions today as those posed in your testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, I move that Mr. Sullivan's 7 pages of pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Sullivan's pre-filed direct testimony will be received into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Sullivan, did you also pre-file 3 exhibits with your direct testimony marked as DFS 1 through DFS 3?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to those exhibits?
I do not.
Madam Chair, I move that Mr. Sullivan's pre-file exhibits DFS 1 through DSF 3 be entered into the record as the next hearing exhibit.
Mr. Sullivan's pre-filed exhibits attached to his pre-filed direct testimony designated as DFS 1 through DFS 3 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 3 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan, did you prepare a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I did.
Would you please present your summary at this time?
Sure. Good morning, Madam Chair Belser, members of the Commission. The purpose of my testimony is to present the findings and recommendations resulting from ORS Audit Department's examination of Dominion Energy South Carolina's purchase gas adjustment, referred to by its acronym PGA, and gas purchasing policies for the period August 2021 through July 2022, which is the review period in this docket. Exhibit DFS1 presents, for each month of the review period, the components which comprise the cumulative PGA over-under collection. Dominion began the period with a net under collection of $840,315. Activity during the review period for the various components in the PGA resulted in an under collection balance on July 31st, 2022 of $13,109,970. During ORS's review of the PGA, the company provided ORS with detailed calculations of its interstate pipeline storage and liquefied natural gas, or LNG, storage facility inventories. ORS accumulated the various inventory levels by location in total and summarizes them in Exhibits DFS 2 and DFS 3 for Commission consideration. Based on our examination, it is the opinion of ORS that the company's PGA under collection on July 31st, 2022 of $13,109,963 shown on Company Witness Smith's exhibit number JRS1 is accurately stated.
Does this conclude your summary?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Rust.
Good morning.
Will you please state your name and occupation?
Sure. My name is Heather Rust, and I'm employed by the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff as a Senior Regulatory Analyst.
Ms. Rust, I'm going to ask that you pull that microphone a little bit closer or lean forward. I apologize, but we need to hear you. Thank you.
And are you the same Heather Rust who pre-filed 13 pages of direct testimony in this case on October 6th, 2022?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, ORS asks that the pre-filed direct testimony of Heather Rust be entered into the record of the case as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Ms. Rust, I apologize if I mispronouncing your name, will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Rust, did you prepare a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, I did.
Will you please present that summary to the Commission?
Good morning, Madam Chair Belzer and members of the Commission. The purpose of my testimony is to present ORS's findings and recommendations regarding its review and examination of Dominion Energy during the review period. First, ORS reviewed the company's gas purchasing policies and practices and found them to be reasonable. ORS found that the company is prepared to meet this winter's projected firm customer requirements. Second, ORS found that DESC administered and recovered its gas costs in a manner consistent with current Commission-approved tariffs and Commission orders. Third, ORS reviewed the company's proposed calculations of the demand cost of gas allocation factors and agrees with these factors as calculated by the company to be implemented in January 2023. Fourth, ORS recommends the company evaluate the feasibility, cost, and benefits to customers of a natural gas hedging program. ORS recommends that the company provide the results of the evaluation to the Commission, ORS, and other interested parties as a part of the company's annual PGA filing in 2023. Finally, ORS recommends several reporting items related to the Mount Valley Pipeline Project and other pipeline projects, as discussed in my direct testimony, that will help interested parties apprised of the status of the Mount Valley Pipeline Project and other pipeline projects, as well as the impact on the company's operations, forecast, and projections.
Does that conclude your summary?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Rust is now available for questions from the parties and the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Huber. Mr. Gissendanner or Mr. Burgess?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for this panel? Vice Chair Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Rust, says it's your first time testifying.
Yes, sir.
Well, let me say welcome to the Commission. Happy to have you here. You've heard the other testimony about the hedging programs and different things in the past. And somewhere in your testimony talked about drawing on the experiences of the larger Dominion fleet or company as far as recommendations. Did you have a chance to look at if there are other Dominion groups that have hedging and how that was working for them?
I have not done that as a part of my review.
Okay. But you put that as a recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What was the basis of ORS making this recommendation in this case?
Well, again, we wanted the company to draw on its greater Dominion Energy Incorporated umbrella to see if they had any policies or procedures that they could pull from to be able to implement a program potentially. We're just simply asking for an evaluation of the company.
Okay, and they've agreed to do that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Powers. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Caston?
To, I guess, along the lines of that question earlier, I think Ms. Jackson, in relative to hedging, and I don't want to put words in her mouth because I don't remember exactly what was said, but something that seemed like along the lines of, attempt to hedge was really mostly for volatility, not to get a cheaper price.
That's correct.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you agree with what you said?
We're ultimately looking for ways to mitigate risk to customers, price risk in this case.
Could you repeat that just a tad louder?
We're looking for additional ways to mitigate risk to our customers.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I needed.
Commissioners, anything further? Mr. Sullivan, I note a footnote on your DFS 1 with regard to an adjustment for carrying cost.
Yes, ma'am.
And can you explain what that was?
Yes, that's associated with the Bushy Park LNG facility. We noticed that they had made, Dominion had made an adjustment for carrying costs, so we asked some questions discovery about that. And apparently during the test period, they had some malfunctions or misreadings with their meters at the Bushy Park facility, and what the meters were indicating that more LNG or more gas was pulled out of the LNG facility than was really pulled out of the Bushy Park facility. And so they had to do a journal entry to increase the inventory and the cost of gas. And due to that, that ultimately changes the under collection balance. So therefore they had to make a carrying cost correction also.
But Dominion caught the need for the adjustment. I hate to use the word error, but there was something that was a little wonky, and they caught that and corrected it. Is that correct?
Correct. They called them the orifice flow meters. They malfunctioned. So when they detected it, they corrected the problem. You can kind of see that. You can see that on my DFS 3. If you look at on the bottom, volume adjustment, and you'll see that there was a large volume adjustment in December, and that was when they discovered that those meters were indicating that more gas had been withdrawn from the Bushy Park facility than what had actually been withdrawn. And so they had a increase volume adjustment to inventory.
So is it fair to conclude that Dominion has some sort of checks and balances going on that allows them to check on monthly accounting adjustment or accounting figures or journal entries, so that if a mistake or if an error was made, that they can catch it and get it corrected?
Correct, and I'll note the other adjustments in that volume adjustment you see in subsequent months, and what that was after they repaired those meters, and they actually had repaired some other what they called sensing lines. After they repaired those, they did some monthly volume checks just to make sure that what they had fixed, what they had repaired, that the facility was working appropriately.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Carolee Williams.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Good to see you all this morning. Thank you for being here. I think my questions are all for Ms. Zarust. How'd I do? That's Zarust?
That's right.
Okay. Okay. Related to the questions that I asked about the hedging program analysis and the question about an independent versus in-house analysis and cost-benefit analysis. Do you have an opinion about that?
I agree with what the company witness Rose Jackson said. We are still in the process of determining what that would look like. We're in the beginning phases.
Thank you. And it looks like the reserve margin's been increasing since about 2017, as indicated on page 7 of your testimony. And I wondered if you knew why.
I do not know why it's increasing. I would imagine that is based on the company having different flexibility with increasing their pipeline, operational flexibility.
And that sounds very similar to what Ms. Jackson said, to a similar question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And on page 8, do you anticipate the company being able to meet capacity margins and its demand on peak days based on your analysis?
Based on my analysis, I do agree that the company is able to meet the firm capacity requirement.
Thank you very much. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, any further questions of this panel? Hearing none. ORS, any redirect?
No redirect.
Thank you. Panelists, thank you. You may stand down. Appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes ORS's case.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey. Is there anything further to come before the commission in this docket today? Counsel for the parties, I'm going to ask that y'all get with Staff Counsel Moser and discuss a date for a proposed order, if you would. And if there's nothing further from the parties in this matter, we will close this. Thank you for your attendance and your attention today, and safe travels as you leave the commission today. This hearing is adjourned.